To begin the session, may I invite our first keynote speaker, Engineer Dr. Shelley Zhou, Head of Corporate Sustainability of Hang Seng Bank, to deliver her presentation. Dr. Zhou, please.
A very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Business Environmental Council, for inviting me and Hang Seng Bank here for us to share this opportunity to share with you. This year at the bank, we are celebrating our 19th years anniversary. At 19 years old, we did some rethink how to redefine the purpose and the value as a corporation. Now, let me show you a video first. Bingo. Okay, you can see sustainability is one of the four brand values we defined for ourselves, and it also supports the other three brand values. And we aspire to build up a so-called future-proofed business. So what does future-proofed business mean for a corporate leader here in Hong Kong for 19 years? Now, let's back to a very important topic. To be a future-proofed business, we have to tackle this issue, right? Climate change issues. Climate change not only brings us the risk. I think at the previous panel discussion, we talked a lot about how the climate risk will impact our balance sheet. The climate risk will bring us the credit risk and a lot of financial risk as well. However, we also think that climate change can also bring us opportunities, especially as financial institutions. As financial institutions, we not a catalyst, but a facilitator. We can try to mobilize as a fund, the capital, to achieve the net zero transition. I think as the previous panel already covered a lot, say how we can invest technology, innovation, how we can help companies on that journey. So for today, back to this topic, I will share with you at a bank how we actually measure our Scope 3 and how to manage it. And I think for all of you are very clear, and you can see it's very similar for the HSBC because Hang Seng Bank is also a subsidiary of HSBC Group. So for us, the Scope 3 emission, I think we all know very clearly, Scope 1 is our own operation emissions, Scope 2 from our our electricity, purchase electricity, while Scope 3 at the bank is like 100 or 200 times of the Scope 1 and the Scope 2 emission, which mainly from two things. One is supply chain, another one, and the more important is from our financed emission. So what we do actually, we actually said, as I mentioned, we contribute to HSB Group's climate ambition, and we set 3 pillars for our climate strategy. The first one, we want to be a net zero bank. By definition, net zero bank is a transition, is 2030 net zero operation and supply chain, and the 2015 finance emission net zero of our portfolio. The second is how we help our client, help our customers to that transition. Huifeng mentioned that if all our customers have set a very clear targets, transition to net zero, my job done, because my portfolio emission of finance emission could be net zero. And the third but not least is, as we looked at here in Hong Kong, we also think that sustainability, especially climate change, is a community project. So one company cannot handle climate change, and especially when later we talk about TNFD, climate solution, nature-based climate solution, climate biodiversity, all these topics. So we do really want to support the community and to see how we can forge so-called community-based climate solutions as well as a project. So that's basically our 3 pillars, very much to contribute to HS Group's climate ambition. And, but first of all, we want to showcase how we be the best of us. So what do you mean by the best of us? That is our operational carbon, which we can control basically, right? We know where the data come from and how we can be the best to showcase. And that is, I don't know whether you may not know, our headquarters building in Central, you all know where is it, right? But you may not know our headquarters building in Central got the BEC Plus LEED, the green certificate, as the gold certificate, as a first bank building here in Hong Kong. And the 2 weeks ago, we also got the GBA, not the Greater Bay Area, but the Green Building Awards for our renovation retrofitting project. Not only that, we got the first Hong Kong bank buildings to got WELL Gold certified, and also to showcase that we want to be people-centric, we want to take care of people, our staff's awareness, and to provide that collaborative working space. So for that building, we also pilot a lot of the advanced and quite interesting, even the pilot innovative solutions for that building. So that is where we want to be the best of us. But the most important thing, I think, is how about your finance emission? For the topic for this section is how we can reduce our Scope 3 emission. Following HSBC Group, we set quite sectorial targets. Okay, so the targets are the same. You may ask me where these targets come from. So if you have been to IEA, right, International Energy Institution, you know IEA published 2023 the net zero pathways for different sectors. So a majority of the banks, including HSBC Group, including Hang Seng Bank, will adopt the same we called sector transition pathways. Now, the question is that, then how can you reduce? How can we reduce? We all know that Scope 3, the pain point is we do not have the data quality and the data availability. So we launched, so the HSBC Group established very complex, I use this word, very complicated methodology to do the transition plan assessment, to assess our client. For us, we think we launched that as well, follow the group at Hang Seng Bank. We treat it as a capability building for our RMs, relationship manager. What does that mean? Means our RMs, our relationship manager, need to understand their clients very well or where they are, basically. How to? So you say, okay, so they need to go through, they need to study, basically, their ESG report, their disclosed data, talk with their client, basically how they can get the data. And then that is really on-job learning process. And we do appreciate that process. So that's why we launched out. By doing that process, at least our RMs can talk to me. So, oh, Shelley, I don't think this materiality is good for this company. I said, So for this sector, we should study all these things, right? So that is a learning process that we think is just a data collection and information collection process. And then the second step basically is, now you see we have a target. By 23, for example, 23% or 34% reduction target. But how to achieve that? Then we need to, sustainability, we need to play a role to say, okay, these, you guys are my client, hopefully. Whether in this sector, are these my material clients? Where do you have a target? Will your target meet my transition pathway? Okay, so that is assessment, right? When you get the information, you will get the data, you need to assess that. I'm so sorry, if a bad guy, you are beyond my transition pathway. What should I do? What should I do? I need to have an engagement plan to work together with you, of course, right? And then we need to identify the feasible technologies, the solutions, as I mentioned before. And that we called client transition program. And by doing that, hopefully we can meet our target, not the interim target, but also the net zero by 2015. I think Hui Fu also shared this one for our transition plan. And the last but not least, I also want to call out one point. So not only we need to handle, manage, measure our scope 3 of finance emission. As a financial institution, we are investor, we are a lender, right? For Hang Seng Bank, we also have we also showcase how we all together can contribute to the whole ecosystem. For example, we have our very unique Hang Seng Indexes companies. Hang Seng Indexes have launched a lot of ESG or even the first low carbon indexes. So all these indexes basically provide a benchmark and a tool for the investors. If the investor want to consider low carbon or ESG investment. At the same time, we also have asset manager Hang Seng Investment Limited. Hang Seng Investments, they are the number one ETF fund manager in Hong Kong in terms of AUM. So they launched the Hong Kong First ETF, they launched a Hong Kong First ESG ETF, and back to today's topic, they launched the Hong Kong, the first low carbon ETF, and adopt the Hang Seng indexes, the index data. So you can see this is like an ecosystem, right? We have the benchmark, we provide the tools for investors, and we also provide the different products, investment products. So hopefully I just give you a few examples that how we all can contribute to the whole ecosystem to tackle this problem. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Zhou, for your sharing. Please be seated. Now, may I invite Mr. Sébastien Pivet Chief Sustainability Officer of A.S. Watson Group, to give his keynote presentation. Mr. Pivet, please.
All right. Okay, good. Good morning, everyone. And first of all, thank you to BEC. So Simon, Merlin, thank you very much for inviting me today. So I'll try to give you a high level of how retail engage on Scope 3 through the presentation. But briefly on my role involves basically being able to engage so many stakeholders, not just externally, but also internally. So I need to be able to talk different language, finance, marketing, product development, logistics, but that makes the job very, very interesting. So first of all, apologies, I need to go through that. Most of you from Hong Kong know the picture, at least for the retail in Hong Kong. But this is just to reflect on the complexity for us on sustainability. We are aware of it. We've got ways to manage that complexity. But we're in 28 markets in Europe, UK, since Brexit, Asia, and we have 12 retail brands. Currently, we are within the scope of TCFD, which we're already working on in the UK, within the scope of ISSB coming in Hong Kong in 2025, and the CSRD 2026. So we have to work on those three frameworks. And well, we're quite happy because they're getting smaller and smaller, so maybe we'll get only 2 by the end of next year. So where are we now on sustainability? So we had this framework built back in 2010 when we set up our Global Sustainability Committee, headed by our group CEO. So we report to the board on strategy, on progress. And we've got 3 distinctive pillars. And each pillars basically reflect a little bit more the focus of our sustainability journey. On the planet pillar, fighting the climate crisis, and I'm going to talk about it in the next couple of slides. We talked also about building greener stores. For us, it's very important not just to look at energy management, but also the materials we're using there. And combined with that, the zero waste challenge we have from all our operations. On people, we talk about human rights, and for that, we've been doing social audits in our supply chain, value chain, since 2008. We've got a lot of work around, of course, our people, our community, and finally on products, it's really about engaging our customers. I mean, as a retailer, we're not going to go in that journey of sustainability and reducing environmental impact without customers. So we need to make sure customers also are part of that journey and how best to engage them that by showing that we can improve our products assortment, not just our own brand products. We also work a lot with the big brands, L'Oréal, P&G, Unilever, to provide customers with different type of products, a bit more sustainable in terms of packaging or ingredients. So, fighting the climate crisis. We had our science-based target validated by SBTi last year, covering the 3 scopes. Scope 1, Scope 2, Scope 3. I'm not going to re-explain. I think the previous speakers already did a good job on that. We've got an absolute contraction for Scope 1 and Scope 2 of 50.4% versus 2018 base year by 2030. And on Scope 3, for those familiar taking targets with SBTi, you can just take one target. And usually you can choose either an absolute reduction or an intensity reduction, depending on how you want to measure it. We took on purpose a second target, a supplier engagement. For retailer, this is essential. You're not, again, going to go there. I mentioned the customers, but also the partners, the suppliers we work with. So we have a target first on in terms of intensity, but the supplier engagement is feeding that target as well and will help us to contribute to decrease our intensity on Scope 3. I wanted to give you an overview of Scope 3. So years back, I was reading a CDP report showing the average Scope 3 amount, the relative percentage of the total emissions for different industries. And I was surprised to see, and that was I think 2 or 3 years ago, from that CDP report showing that retail Scope 3 is about 45–50% of emission. This is far away from the real pictures. So this number is not just typically just for AS Watson, this is across all retail, it's over 90%. And if you're talking with FMCG brands like L'Oréal, P&G, same, over 90% comes from supply chain. And this gives a very good understanding of where the impact is It doesn't mean that Scope 1, Scope 2 are not important. We need to tackle that. But Scope 3 has a bigger breadth of complexity and work to be done. Out of that, we can run and try to cover all the different categories. There are 15 categories under Scope 3, but it's important to tackle what we call the big priorities for us. So we have 21% coming from categories 1, which is purchase goods and services, so typically are the suppliers where we buy our product. We've got upstream transport and distribution, so how these products are delivered to our warehouse across the world. And finally, the use of products sold, how customers use the product. And that one is very challenging. I'll give you an example. If you want to decrease our carbon footprint on a shower gel, yes, we can tell our customers, please take a 5-minute shower, cold water. Can we do that? I don't think so. So we need to think differently. We need to identify other products where maybe innovation is much easier for customers to adopt than others. So I was asked to share a little bit more about intervention. So there's a lot. I'll try to summarize it in a small table. Starting with Scope 1. So the really easy one for us, I would say, are of course Scope 1 and Scope 2. These are operational emissions. We control them. We decide who we buy from, what we do with it. So it's essentially greener refrigerant. So typically for us, and in Hong Kong, essentially food retail, Watson's Wine. It's about fleet efficiency measures for our fleets. And then, of course, if you really want to reduce emissions, there's no point looking at moving from gasoline to diesel. You're not going to get much reduction, maybe 7% maximum. Go for EVs. But EVs is very challenging. We think that EVs is a very simple technology. Let's roll it out. There are countries in Europe where it's rolled out, but the problem is there is not enough chargers. So where do we charge them? So this is something complex, but there is a very good progress going on, interestingly coming from Asia. So today, across our 28th market, the market today that leads on EV is China. We've got cities like Guangzhou, Shenzhen, Beijing, and Shanghai, where all deliveries we have between our warehouse and stores are now done with electrical vehicles, 100%. Electricity, very big. For us, the hotspot of electricity is, of course, our retail, over 16,000 stores. We worked first on measure of reduction, so anything related to improvement on sustainability, whether it's waste, energy, start by reduction first. So a lot of work has been done since 2014. We put a program in place. We've got, in every market, an energy champion that helps us to drive that. But there's so little you can do. Again, we are a retailer. So dimming the light in our stores is not something we can do. We're not in a nightclub business. We need a bit of light for customers to read the labels, and my God, the labels are getting smaller and smaller. So we need to look at other initiatives to reduce it. But usually what we've seen over the years is that we slightly went down in terms of intensity in kilowatt hour per square meter, but now we reach, I would say, a plateau, and we know we can't go further down. But what we have to do is maintain that plateau, make sure that we're efficient, and then we can offset it. And the only offset allowed by SBTi with our near-term targets is using renewable energy. Today in Europe, we have about 86% of our total electricity that comes exclusively from renewable energy. And it's mainly driven by our market in the UK and the market we have in Benelux. In Asia, we started already. It's more complex. For those familiar with energy, Europe is deregulated. You can choose very easily your service provider. Asia is not. So we can only buy renewable energy through what we call EAC, Energy Attribute Certificates. And in fact, what they are investment localized within the market, regulated, to ensure that that market and those utility companies who sell it can reinvest in more renewable energy over time. So we started this year. We kick off a purchase of about 20% equivalent of yearly consumption in all our China and Hong Kong markets, and 10% in other markets in Asia. And talking about financing, I will talk about what we do particularly on that. Supplier engagement, on Scope 3, supplier engagement, product lifecycle assessment, and product redesign. These are really the three areas where we know we are going to provide change, positive change, and along the way we will reduce our Scope 3. On supplier engagement, it starts by relooking at our procurement policies ensuring that when we do tenders, we don't just do tenders as is, looking at all ways of working and all type of products. How do we change those products and those services, and making sure that we get then a bid for that as well. Awareness. A big finding we had last year, so just after we got our science-based target validated, we were already working on our next project. How do we engage suppliers? So we contracted a third-party platform to help us on that. We selected that platform instead of using CDP, essentially because of that supplier engagement that is much more solid. We did few webinars. We invited a bunch of about 160 suppliers. So just for information, we work with about maybe 11,000 suppliers. Top 500 is over 80% of our emissions. We invited 160. We had more than 160 people present in the calls because we saw a very big demand, even in Asia, very interested to understand what they can do. And what we realized after when we told them, okay, now the platform is open, so the platform is an engagement. They have a small questionnaire, not as long as CDP, but to understand how much maturity they have. And that's when we realized that even large suppliers have never done Scope 1, Scope 2, which is quite surprising. And this is today the real challenge. We can talk about listed companies, large companies. There's many more companies today who do not understand what they need to do because they don't have the knowledge. So awareness for us is key. We run webinars every year. So this year only we had about 5 webinars, Chinese, English, to make sure that we capture the audience attention. So we raise awareness. We try to provide them tools, so the tool we're using is for free for them. We don't charge them. And then additionally, what we do do deals with companies who provide support on greenhouse gas accounting to help them as well to do it if they cannot do it in-house. And then talking about products, we're a retailer. Scope 3 emissions are usually, when you start the accounting, start with a lot of proxy. So you use volume-based, spend-based. You might be able to capture a bit of information about your staff commuting, capital goods, things like that. But it's still very much proxy-based. But that's the beginning, just to get a picture, okay, is it 90%, is it 60% or less? Over time, you need to get more granular data, more primary data. And the best primary data is once you get it at the product level, and you go through what we call life cycle assessment, understanding from the raw materials, manufacturing until the product is disposed, or the packaging disposed, what's the carbon footprint of that life cycle. For that, we are currently working with a large industry consortium in Europe, regrouping all the FMCG brands, a number of retailers like us, health and beauty, and the objective is to develop a tool that will be used by those members for free, where we will be able to do life cycle of assessment of all our products. The objective for us, we have a footprint in Europe and in Asia, and my approach on sustainability has always been to align everything, and always using, I would say, the highest requirement in the market and making sure that everybody else adopts it. So we will use that, not just for our European products, but also for our Asian brands. Finally, product redesign. So product redesign, I would say, is a sort of a low-hanging fruit. Doing an LCA is very complex, so you cannot just do it overnight. It's very expensive if you want to currently use certain tool out there. But the low-hanging fruits are very simple. Less packaging, that's a no-brainer. Using more recycled materials to encourage circular economy. So these are the things we've already implemented across a large portfolio of our own brand products. And again, the next step is to look at these LCAs and to understand what else can we do on the product to improve them. Financing the intervention. In terms of Scope 1, Scope 2, these are our operational emissions. For that, this is basically managed in our market, or what we call the business unit. This needs to be budgeted. Every market has their own science-based target, by the way. So we have a grouped SBTi-approved target. But once we have that target approved, we can use the SBTi Excel tool to develop very quickly specific targets for our market. We've implemented a GHG tracker that tells our business unit where they are. How are you going on the scale of Scope 1? Are you reducing, are you increasing, or have you already reached your target? And same for Scope 2. And that tracker is shared with our board, and we basically have a lot of discussion on mitigations and, of course, interventions behind the scene. On the Scope 3, there are, I would say, financing coming from group. So I talked about the tool that we're using in terms of supply engagement. The LCA tool as well is our investment, and we will use for our own brand and our suppliers as well. And product redesign is also at the business unit level. We have a number of markets that develop products, but that's part of the negotiation. I know there were questions about how is that impacting customers in terms of cost. Well, retailers are very understanding of that issue. And we know there is a lot of report out there that explain the challenges on sustainability and customers. You will read somewhere that customers are willing to buy 50% or 60% of them are ready to buy more sustainable product. But the leap toward action is completely different. Simply because there is a certain number of hurdles. Price is one hurdle, but of course then it's trust and transparency from the brands and the retailers. So price is important. So that's why as a retailer we know that we cannot just suddenly make product more expensive overnight. Nobody will buy it. We had a very bad experience about 10 years ago where we wanted to launch fully organic and EcoCert certified personal care product in Europe. Didn't work. Our customers didn't come to us because this is not what they expect us to sell. We are not in that field. So we need to be very careful. So we're still trying to do similar products, but we need to find different ways of doing it and to make sure that they are also trusted by the customers. Finally, to conclude in terms of our learnings on that journey, you see there's a lot of bullet points on the challenge. Well, that's the reality, and we need all to be aware of it. It's not something that you can do overnight. So when we talk to our suppliers, we always tell them, don't wait. If you're waiting a year, 2 years, saying, well, the legislation is not here, I can still do whatever I want, I don't need to look in those matters, that's a wrong attitude. You need to look at it very quickly. There's a lot of challenges that comes from within, but also come from outside. I mean, today, if you're looking for a tool doing greenhouse gas emission accounting, there's a choice. There's hundreds of them. And I think there's even a company coming out almost every day, sending me emails and telling me, oh, we've got the best tool ever on the platform. And that's a challenge for companies who basically try to find a way and try to have a compass to how do I do it. But opportunities is very short, but in fact, this is the real driver for us. The opportunities sit in not only the value chain, our suppliers. We've shown them basically that when we can save energy in our stores, they can save energy as well in their production facilities by doing very simple things. In operation, it's really about also efficiency and rethinking. So for us, innovation is key. Innovation is what basically keeps us awake at night, making sure that we are still relevant to our customers and relevant to our business as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pivet, for your sharing. Please be seated. While we are setting up for the panel discussion, may I remind you that, similar to the previous session, online participants are encouraged to use the Q&A box if you have any questions for our speakers. And for the audience in the room, please later you can raise your hands and we will pass you the mic. Now, we are pleased to have Ms. Genevieve Hilton, E-ESG Committee Co-Chair of American Chamber of Commerce in Hong Kong, to moderate the discussion. And please also welcome our panelists, Engineer Dr. Shelley Zhou, Head of Corporate Sustainability of Hang Seng Bank, Ms. Qian Li, Senior Director of Budweiser APAC, Ms. Priscilla Lin, Sustainability and Strategy Manager of Schneider Electric Hong Kong Limited, and Mr. Sébastien Pivet, Chief Sustainability Officer of A.S. Watson Group, on stage for the panel discussion. And I will now pass the time to you, Ms. Hilton, please.
Thanks very much, and thanks especially to both Shelley and Sébastien for sharing your insights about what it's really like. We talked this morning, I think, a lot about financing, and now we come to the part about delivering, which is probably just as difficult. And I think what we're also seeing is that tackling the Scope 1 challenge was already difficult. When we talk about Scope 3, that is an entirely different ballgame. So maybe I can start actually with Sébastien to ask you a little bit more about how you manage that complexity of the process. I mean, there's so many brands, I think 12 of your own brands, hundreds and thousands of different kinds of suppliers. What are your practical solutions for actually dealing with that, making it work?
Well, the first challenge is, as you said, is the fact that with 12 retail brands, you've got 12 ways of thinking, simply because you've got 12 different markets, basically. So the challenge for us was to make sure that we all go in the same direction. So there is more of a top-down approach in terms of the strategy, understanding what we need to do. So we talked about SBTI, but before SBTI, We joined organizations like the Roundtable for Sustainable Palm Oil. We took commitment with the New Plastic Economy of Ellen MacArthur Foundation, and many other. And many. Firework. Yes. No more microphone. Yes, okay, back. And many other initiatives. And these are driven from the top, and we ask all markets basically to fit in and participate with intervention locally. But of course, we need to give flexibility in our market, because they know better than us at Group from Hong Kong how to address that and how to engage locally suppliers as well as customers.
Thank you. And another thing I wanted to ask of Shelley, to clarify from your presentation, it's very clear that in the financial industry, the Scope 1, 2 versus Scope 3 emissions are significantly different. And the question is about materiality. How do you actually assess the materiality? And especially in terms of scale, are we talking about the individual level, the institutional level? How do you manage it?
Materiality, I see a lot of ESG sustainability professionals here. So we use a lot of materiality in different ways, right? ESG report, we have the material aspect, materiality matrix and the test. Now, I think the philosophy all behind are the same. If we talk about today's topic, Scope 3 emission, no matter the supply chain, we call category 1, or finance emission, we call category 15. I think the materiality, the assessment are the same, because first thing we need to measure, we need to get our baseline to know where we are, who we're actually working with, who are my suppliers, who are my clients, basically. And when we talk about the measurement for finance emission, technically we need to follow PCAF. So for a lot of you know that is for financial emissions calculation. That means we need a specific calculation methodology for finance emission. Okay, then where I have the baseline, right? Basically, I know where we are. However, go back to your question, I have tens of thousands of clients in my client portfolios. So I need to at least understand who are the material players. That means who contribute most of my finance emission. Could be under different sectors, because as I mentioned, we have the sector pathway. So those 10, we call high carbon intensive sectors. Okay, who are they? And in each sector, I also have a lot of clients, big ones, small ones. Big in terms, not a big in terms of size, big in terms of its carbon emission and their contribution to my finance emission. So that we identify, we call it material clients, and that is a basis to start with our engagement.
And I'm very happy to hear that I'm both the Hang Seng Bank account holder and a customer of Watson's. And I'm glad to hear that you're not going to ask me to take cold showers, and you're not going to track my individual shopping habits from the bank account. But I am actually also a customer of Budweiser from time to time, as probably some of you as well. So let's hear a little bit from Qian. What are the material aspects for the business for the beverage industry, and how is that different from what we've heard so far?
Let me introduce Budweiser. Actually, we're the largest beer company in APAC. So we have over 50 brands. Apart from Budweiser, we have Corona, Hoegaarden, and a lot. So, but we actually very heavily rely on the natural capital. Our business, basically, we use the agricultural crops to brew our beer. And we use water to brew beer, and also we use the packaging and the fuel to transport and distribute our beer. So material, we have 2025 sustainability goals. Actually, is the very important factors for the water, for the climate actions, and also for the packaging agriculture. So for that 4 parts, and coming to us with the ambitions 2040, we achieve net zero across our value chain. So that's a material aspect for our business.
And what are some of the key actions that you've taken to identify hotspots, some of the interventions you've taken?
So for the Scope 3, similar to Sébastien's sharing just now, we actually engage over 6,000 suppliers and contractors. 92% of our carbon footprint is coming from our suppliers, upstream and downstream suppliers. So around us, almost 50% is our packaging suppliers, with the Scope 3 carbon emissions. So how to work with them, we also have the capacity building, helping them to set up the SBTI. But the first thing is understanding, because we operate in India, China, Korea, and Southeast Asia are 4 major markets. So the people's concept, as Sébastien shared, is not different about the supply chain management, Scope 1, Scope 2. So helping them to audit their carbon footprint is the first step, and then helping them to calculate the data of and how to calculate their Scope 1, Scope 2 is our Scope 3. So actually we have a platform coming from our Accelerate program. We have an Accelerate program to support the startups. So around 400 suppliers in our supply chain generate Scope 3 actually every quarter to provide their carbon emissions to us on the platform. That's why we can provide relatively accurate data to the bankers. We have a $5 million sustainability-linked loan as well. So that's how we connect for the actions.
Thank you. And now I'd like to turn to a very different industry. So if I can ask Priscilla to actually tell us a little bit about what the company does, maybe a little bit more difficult to understand than beer. But also, how does this work in your industry?
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Priscilla. I'm from Schneider Electric. So Schneider Electric is a leading company in digital transformation on energy management and automation. What does that mean? For our day-to-day uses, maybe like light switch, your power extension cord, EV charger. But we really focus on a lot of like, how do we do the digital transformation from how we use energy? So you think about our electronic equipment. So we talk about safety. We talk about like how do we decarbonize with our customer. The more you know how you manage your energy usage, the more you can decarbonize it. So that's what we do.
Now, this sounds as if it must be extremely data intensive. I mean, from the beginning to the end. And you have also, I think, quite a lot of suppliers in the supply chain. So how do you manage the data? Is there a particular platform you use? Do you use external consultants?
So since we are also a digital partner for our customer, so we use our in-house EcoStruxure Resource Advisor. It's a tool that tracks all the data management. So we sell it to our customer, but we use it ourselves as well. That means like whatever ESG data you have, we'll track it in the system. Your spend data, your data with the supplier. So in 2021, we actually have a set of 6 global commitments. From climate, how we use our resources, leading with trust, having equal opportunity, ensure everyone in all generations have the power to have a sustainable development goal, and also work with local community. So in that sense, our work is to really work with the whole ecosystem, because 99% of our carbon emissions are from our Scope 3. So later on, I can share a bit more.
I think that's something we're hearing several times now, is that not just the complexity and the scope, but the scale is so much bigger in Scope 3, which just really dwarfs everything else that we've been talking about until now. Maybe I can come back to Shelley for a minute and talk about, in that sense, how do you actually set the targets, and particularly in the supply chain, because you've spoken about your own target setting. But how do you work with that? How do you manage the targets otherwise?
You want me to talk about supply chain or finance?
If you'll excuse me,
I think I will leave the supply chain to Sébastien and Qian.
Yes, if you excuse me, that's what I meant to say.
Yeah. So I think I mentioned a few times about IEA. If you listen to what I'm talking about. So I think majority of the companies, okay, first of all, methodology. We also use, we call it a science-based approach, SBTI. So SBTI provide us a very good, the target setting approach. So how we can align with the 1.5 degrees C or 2 degrees, more than far below 2 degrees C. And then on the sector-wise, as I mentioned, IEA have these global decarbonization pathways for different sectors. Actually, I bring an example here, but I don't think I can remember the data because I see a lot of the people in this room are from the building construction sectors. Now, for one of the IEA's Net Zero 2015 scenario, building sector, it's a very clear target. For example, 2025, no new sales of fossil fuel boilers. 2030, all new buildings net zero ready. 2035, most appliance and cooling system sold are the best in class. 2040, 15% of existing buildings retrofitted into zero carbon ready levels. 2045, 15% of the heating demand met by heat pumps. And 2050, more than 85% of buildings are net zero ready. Now, I cannot remember all these things, but I bring my iPad. Now, that is just an example. So IEA basically paved a lot of a roadmap and clear targets. So back to our group HSBC and the Hang Seng Bank's approach. So we want to have these pathways for decarbonization and consider two most important elements: money, as well as I mentioned before, technological feasibility, right? So these two elements we need to put into. And then I think we also need to, as I mentioned before, where we are and set ambition and how we get there. But back to your question, I think use a science-based approach, as Sébastien mentioned before, benchmark with IEA sector pathways, and have our own sector-based targets. So that is basically where we are.
Thank you. Now, you mentioned a minute ago your relationship with your parent company, and I think this is also true for Sébastien. You belong to a larger group. So how, in that context, do you work with interact with the parent company? How do you do goal setting? How do you do reporting?
Indeed, in Hong Kong, we have CK Hutchison, our major shareholder, but we also have a minor shareholder, Temasek. So years ago, what we've done is we've aligned with the strategy they were putting in place. For a conglomerate like CK Hutchison, it's very important across their subgroups that the strategy is basically identical. So SBTI targets, etc. So as long as we have those, I would say, high-level strategy aligned with them, I think we've got still a lot of flexibility to implement additional that are more relevant in terms of materiality to our industry, retail. We report, for the moment, essentially all the KPIs required for the Hong Kong Stock Exchange, ESG reporting. But going forward, I mentioned that we are going to ourselves having to report directly in many markets, in Europe with the CSRD, in Hong Kong with the ISSB, and we started already this year with the TCFD in the UK. So that relationship, I would say, works well. The same way that we tell our business unit what the strategy is, what they need to achieve, but then they can localize as well the intervention.
Thank you. Now, it looks like there's actually a few questions coming in from the audience, but maybe before we get to those, I can ask everybody, all of you, and maybe starting from the left-hand side and coming around, are there any unexpected benefits that have arisen during this process? Something that was maybe surprising, strengthening your relationships with business partners or competitive advantage, for example?
This is a very relevant question for us, since our scope-free emissions are 99%. So where does it come from? It comes from our upstream supplier and also downstream how customers use our product. From supplier side, we have the Zero Carbon Project, our top 1,000 suppliers around the world. In 50+ countries, we work with them to help them decarbonize. How do we do that? We give them the tools. We start with the leader to lead the kind of conversation, because you need the leadership buy-in in order to kickstart this process. Then we provide different education, capacity building tools. It's all for free. We have a platform for them, for our supplier to really understand what it requires to decarbonize. And we work with them like, sometimes it's one-on-one. And in last year, we have over 130 plus live events going on around the world in different language to help them to understand how they can reduce the emission. This is one thing. Which means when we understand more our supplier, our supply chain is more resilient. So it's like an added value for us. The more we work closer with them, the better our growth, our business development is, because we're building this strong partnership. The other part is our customer. How they use our product is just like Sébastien mentioned. I cannot require a customer to change the fuel mix right away. So we up for partnership. So first we start with our design. Our R&D team will look into different product material. We have a very diverse product range. So it might be coming from working on green steel. We've identified the key steel supplier to really have long-term contract to build that sort of incentive in order for them to produce more sustainable material for us. And then we have this eco-design kind of training, capacity building. We have free sustainability school material for everyone. You can sign up online for free. So this is a journey that we need to work together. Not just our customer, not just our supplier. And next step, we're rolling with our partners. So what we see is today, everyone here, whether you understand you use our product or not, because it's quite invisible, your power switch or not. But we are all in this together. And so you decarbonize, we'll work with you along the way. So come talk with us, collaborate with us. We're ready to support in any way.
Good to know you're using the tools that you provide to others as well. How about in the beverage industry? What are the unexpected benefits?
Actually, internally, we always say sustainability is our business. To us, in this decarbonization journey, we feel like reducing Scope 3 carbon emission also need to make business sense. So making business sense means we can use our scale, using our procurement power to talk to our suppliers, helping them for the transition. For example, if you install the solar panel with your CapEx supplier, but we can change our contract with you maybe from 1 year to 3 years. In this way, we reduce our Scope 3, but also we have a stable supply chain partner. So that's the way we're looking at our business in all the aspects. So we'll ask ourselves, is it making business sense? Is making commercial sense, also making sustainable sense? Then we make the decision to do the transition to helping creative model to work with the partners. Internally, we're using CDP rating, actually talking to different stakeholders internally. In this way, we bring alignment in our internal organizations, what kind of data we need, what kind of solutions we need, what initiatives we need, and then we can engage the change, engage internally and externally. Thank you.
I remember from the last section, representative from the Hong Kong land called out, we need to recruit more ESG expert. So I think it's impossible because we have a very limited expert, almost in this room. BEC a very good work. Everybody here online, okay? So I think one point is actually is also one of my the mandate from my boss is that we need to have this we call bank-wide ESG capacity building. So I think that is a very important role because we need to let people know ESG is not something nice to have. ESG is something embedded to our business making decision process, and it's really to bring us back, bring us to future. Let our have the future-proofed business. Okay. So yes, we want each and every role in the bank will be equipped by the ESG and especially climate change knowledges. As I mentioned, one surprise, back to the question, one surprise moment is that I do realize that some of our RMs, relationship managers, they actually have a quite high awareness and a lot of knowledge already during all these decarbonizing or climate transition process. So that is one thing. The second thing I just want to bring out maybe for some food for thoughts is that from financial institutions, I think there is a lot of the peers here, there is one very important topic we all very serious and take care of is we call it greenwashing. I think Sébastien also mentioned about that from the retail or from the corporate perspective. So if you put in this way, what exactly greenwashing means and how we can avoid it. And I see there is a lot of progress in the space, especially with the current ISSB, the new IFRS 2, so climate-related disclosure. We can see there is a convergence of the regulation. Convergence gives us a very good signal in terms of regulation. And if we do really want to avoid greenwashing, we need that very clear signal from regulators and from all of us. And from bank's perspective, as Qian said, we need a lot of data, we need a lot of disclosure from our clients, and that, I think we, as I mentioned before, we can also contribute to whatever ecosystem Priscilla mentioned. So that is my 2 points.
And maybe we can hear from Sébastien.
So we talk about people, definitely, so that's very, very important, and the more we get into that sustainability journey, I think building capabilities, having the talents, and growing the talents, very important, is key to us. We, of course, have people we recruit from externally, but for us, what we found as even more powerful is ingrown talents. So we basically have a group we created back in 2019. We call them Next Gen. They represent younger generation, and they have a mandate of 18 months with us. And it's not just about coming in and advising, well, we should do 1, 2, 3, not so much. They have to revisit the way we do sustainability in different aspects, and they have to challenge us. That's the objective. And at the end of their 3 months of training workshops, we give them basically project. They define the project they want to run, and they will basically lead those projects within organizations. So we do many things at the same time. We're talking about giving opportunity to young person joining us, maybe 1 year experience maximum, to suddenly be exposed to group CEOs, to understand better the culture, to understand how they want to drive or how those topics should be driven. And what we do with them is make sure that those projects are relevant. And once those projects are basically started, we basically incorporate them in our company. So we had projects, for example, around mental health that was started, in fact, by one of these groups before COVID. Today it's part of our group HR working, I would say, process. We had a team who worked on greener stores, again, many years ago. Today, basically, we take it away from them and we put it with our store development team. So growing talent is very important. Or we always look outside. Of course, it's important to look outside to get fresh ideas. But sometimes talent is within the organization. And it's a matter to identify it and to grow it and making sure that basically you can retain the talent as well.
Thank you. We have a couple of questions coming in. One of them is for Qian and also for Sébastien about how often you ask your suppliers to provide the data. So is it, and when do you provide direct support to them, and is there any screen-out mechanism for those who do not meet the expectation?
I guess we do, as I said, we ask our suppliers to provide their carbon footprint for every quarter. We have a platform, yeah.
Is that the same with you, Sébastien?
Yes, correct. So in terms of collection of data today, we have data reported once a year, and usually at the beginning of the year. because sorry, we need to incorporate that in our sustainability report, and we also have to have that in the C.K. Hutchison Holding report. In terms of what do we do with suppliers who don't report anything, well, we can't basically punish them right away. I mean, we had our science-based target approved last year, so we need also to allow them transition time. And the objective for us is really to focus this year and next on awareness and better sense of who are the suppliers who are willing to make an effort. But we've already started in certain commodities to put some criteria in our tenders in terms of how we want those commodities to evolve. And it's already a selection method for us to slowly move away from suppliers who do not understand what we're trying to achieve.
Thank you. And it looks like we have a question for Shelley. And I think you're right in saying there's a lot of construction and building people in the room, because this one is about office space. How much does the reduced office space contribute to the carbon reduction? And what did you do with that space?
I said that is our, compared with our finance emission, we are very proud of that, because we set 2030 operational carbon net zero. And mainly on the building we owned and operated, Scope 1, Scope 2. And for our operation, actually, we include in supply chain as well and the business travels. But let me go back to the Scope 1 and Scope 2 if you talk about the office buildings. So as I mentioned before during my presentation, is actually our facility management team did very, very good job, actually. And give you a quite interesting thing is that some of my friends in the property developer actually messaged me, said, I want to see this or that technology actually you pilot at your headquarters. I said, what? So I didn't imagine that as a bank, as we say, and our bank buildings are actually quite old. We actually pilot a lot of the very front-edge technology, green building technology and the measures. Some are incubated from the science park. So you see it's not mature, it's not with a large commercialized technology, but very early stage technology, we try to do that. And yes, every year we have because our CEO have it's everybody's target, by the way. Each ExCo member, including me, we have the data on the operational carbon in our scorecard. In other words, it's under CEO, if we cannot achieve that carbon reduction for that year, basically will have a huge impact for our bonus, right? So that is also one thing. And yes, we have a very clear roadmap, and also not only carbon, but also a lot of the environmental KPIs.
Thank you. I think that's a very practical tip, which leads to the final question for today, and we can go from right to left this time. Each one of you, I want your best practical advice, and very short, because we only have a minute left total. Piece of very, very practical advice.
Well, if you've not done any science-based targets assessment, I would say that's the first priority. Do it now. It takes time. It took us about 6 months to basically get it validated by SBTi, so do it now. And then the other one basically would be, again, around talent. You need talent to drive it. Don't expect people with another job basically to be able to drive sustainability. It's not possible.
Data quality, data availability, not only your data, but your client, your partner, your supplier's data, that will be the crucial now and for the very near future to come.
I guess for me, is stakeholder engagement. It's like the partnership to not only about the suppliers or business partner, but also the broader community and also the policymakers. With them, actually, in each market, we can move forward with the decarbonization journey.
And the last word?
For us, it's about transparency. Because as a huge company in 100 company, how do we really mobilize the whole ecosystem to make the change? All the information that you haven't heard from me today, you can find online. Anything about the data, methodology, online. It's all transparent. That's how we work with our partner. That's how we work with our supplier. We put the knowledge for free. Some will be surfaced, but most of the things, we are just very open book. Internally, we work with our internal stakeholder. We all know who is responsible for what. The transparency, the governance structure is all clear. The other part is about having this collaborative, learn every day kind of mindset, because in the essence, like sustainability is about change. Our product design is about really embrace the innovation, embracing the new regulation changes to really push forward. So we're here, ready for the change, being very humble about it, and then just work with everyone.
Right, well, thank you very much to all of our panelists and to our speakers, and I hope we'll all get a chance to look at what the resources online and to learn more about what all of these 4 companies are doing. Thank you very much.